Okay, Carien.
Hello.
How's it? Different one, this one. So maybe just to set the scene for people who's watching or listening. So we did 4 episodes. And this one is going to be way different because what I want to try and do is do 4 episodes and then review or defrag or I don't know what the debrief, whatever the word is. So it's just me and you. And then we've also got Liz. Hello,
Hi.
Liz, our producer, because she's also been listening in, and I think what we've been doing the last few months is we've just been listening. We've been asking some questions and listening. And I want to try and process these things. And I want you to help me process it. And I think what the one thing you've taught me is there doesn't necessarily have to be a result. Sometimes just observing things is good enough. Becoming aware of certain things is a lot of the breakthrough. I asked you earlier, assemblage. People can Google if they want to. We could probably put a link in there.
They probably have to Google that.
I have to Google it. So just as a reminder, I studied fine arts originally, so I try and process stuff in that context. So assemblage is like a collage. A collage is a picture made up of images. But the assemblage I like more because it's more in the sculpture world. So if I had to take your chair and put it like skew on this table and put a drill on it on the side, it becomes a new thing because all the individual images loses their form and function and creates a new form and function. So I've got some images that came up when I think about these conversations that I want us to try and process.
So we're looking at 4 episodes, taking something from all of it and putting it together in a new sculpture.
Yes, I think so. I hope so.
Experimental.
It's an experiment. Okay, so the first image that came up in my mind, and it's funny because the feminine and the masculine, sometimes you can speak to it, means something, but I had this image of a woman, and she's standing on a floor of like a digital fabric. It's almost like little squares, but you could going into the infinite. And she's trying to get her hands into it and trying to pull up. And the only good explanation I can have with it is she's trying to lift the standard. Okay. And it's difficult. It's really, there's a lot of tension. There's something holding that fabric on the floor, or it's either a vacuum at the below it or something, but she's definitely straining to pull this up. So that's definitely one of the images I got when I think about these conversations. There's that tension and trying to pull up a standard. That's the one image. The second image I got was of Atlas. So I fell in love with Atlas the first time I saw it because my father told me the story of Atlas when I was really small and we visited the Union buildings. And I don't know if people know this, but the 2 big points of the Union buildings, there's Atlas standing at the top. I don't know what it means for our country, but they are there. They've been there ever since. And Atlas, I even got the tattoo, by the way. And the reason I got the tattoo back then is because of that book.
Atlas Shrugged from Ayn Rand.
At that stage of my life, I was very into that type of stuff. But what I do get when I hear these conversations is the other side of it, where people are trying to hold up something, some heaviness, some standard or some expectation. I don't know what exactly that is. So that's the second image. So the third image I got was that of Ricky Gervais's, and I think he developed it when they were shooting the Office, the original The Office, which is very funny. But they've got the pyramid. The bottom is the losers, middle the clueless, and the top the sociopaths. And so let's hold on to that. And then the last one I've got is when I was in the art business, and I still wish if somebody picks this up, I'm looking for that sculpture from Gerhard Painter. I think Maria Ramos bought it at an auction somewhere. But it's called The Lightning Witch by Gerhard Painter. But it's the Bushmen used to, when they did their rock drawings, they would imagine characters from nature. So one of them is they imagined lightning was a woman, feminine image standing, hitting this lightning rod into the earth. And as far as I understood it, it was some form of intention. Like there's electricity or some form of something that needs to go down into this fabric of reality or world or whatever the case might be. So anyway, so that's might be very abstract. But those are the images I got. So I don't know if you've got anywhere we want to start on that before if you've got any questions on that.
I think what's quite interesting is the strong feminine theme in some of your images. And I mean, the most obvious association with the feminine is that it births something new, right? It brings something that maybe was cultivated for a long time and then starts. And it's almost like a lot of what we spoke about in the last 4 episodes was about that, about like when do you give birth to this new thing that's happening? How do you include it? What is the right time? And I find let's start with your first image, very interesting. Like there's this feminine pull to bring something new, but there's quite a lot of resistance in your image.
You could see her like almost tired and like overstrained from this effort of trying to pull up this fabric, yeah.
So in my mind, it's interesting because I think part of what we discussed in the last 4 episodes was this kind of like change management idea. What do you do with this? How do you get people on board? How do you time if it's the right time to do something new? So there is resistance, but there's something new that's going to happen. But then at the same time, you talk about the contrast of that with the Atlas image and this burden. And I think the other thing that really stood out for me in the last 4 episodes is the role of leadership. And how almost if somebody is going to help the movement from this pool forward, we don't want that to become such a heavy burden, something that just one person carries. Like, how do we almost get a synthesis between those 2 images, I think is where my mind is going. Between the pull to change, the new things, but not just making change the sole responsibility of a leader, and still acknowledging that it kind of is the sole responsibility of the leader.
Yeah, the dialectic, like you say.
Yes.
Because both can be true.
So what do you think? If you've taken many companies through some change, incorporating new things, incorporating new systems, how do you think that synthesis happened?
I think, to go back to those images, there are certain people, and some of them we've interviewed, and some we still need to interview, who takes it as their responsibility, and I think the word is responsibility, to be that person, to offer up their energy, to either try and lift the standard, or at the same time uphold some form of expectation. And there's a cost to it. And that brings me to this Gervais principle. Yeah?
Okay, the cost being?
Well, the cost is there. You've only got so much energy. And most of these individuals do have, because they're not 20-year-olds, they've got husbands, wives, children, and so on. And on that side of the coin, there's loss. There's only so much you can give. And depending on where these people find themselves in these organizations and in what phases they are in these organizations, being a change with systems or whatever the case might be, there are some of these people who are willing to do that. Now, I don't know, and that's why I want to take it to that funny triangle, is where are they? Are they, because the triangle means at the bottom are the losers. Now, it's losers in inverted commas, because it's defined as the people who've lost their negotiation with the economy.
Okay.
And I think it's very relevant to our local space because there's not a lot of jobs. People are willing to settle in this negotiation for less, so that there's also some form of a security, a monthly income, or whatever the case might be, and that's got an effect. The middle is those typical middle to senior management people it's these people who are willing to literally sacrifice their being to make this organization a success. And if you see the sacrifices people take or give, it's incredible. You meet with people, I meet with customers who are all burnt out completely in this attempt to sacrifice to make this almost this bottom part of the pyramid working, and then the sociopaths at the top. Not all of them are sociopaths, but it's the principle of these people are willing to sit at the top and observe this bottom part of the pyramid happening, and to be okay with that, to be okay with dealing with people who's really depressed, burnt out, whatever the case might be. Now, I know they've got programs to try and help these people and fix them, but that's what I saw. That's the image. I don't know if it makes sense.
Yes, sorry, I'm laughing at you saying we're going to fix people. So here's a question. Let's play with this picture, this little triangle. I think I have two questions that came to mind with the triangle, okay? The first one is, if each of these levels sacrifice something, okay, how do we think they would use AI and tech to kind of withstand the sacrifice? Okay, so that's my one question.
Yeah.
My other question is, what is the impact or what is the exact thing that every level loses or sacrifices, right? So you can say the bottom level sacrifices most probably economic gain, right? Middle level, maybe two things, maybe a sense of identity, because my identity becomes what I can do at my company.
Yeah.
And maybe in some cases, family or leisure time or having a life outside of it. And I'll hear from you what you think the top level sacrifices. But then how do I use tech to kind of like resist that, or to think that I'm going to not I think people sometimes use tech or AI thinking it will solve the thing that they're losing. Okay, so let's think about the bottom level. Maybe putting something through ChatGPT or Claude is going to make me sound so much smarter, and it's going to look like I can be more competent, and that'll make me like get a promotion or do something better. Or maybe in the middle block, I use these things to save time, so that I can actually get to my son's rugby match or something, because I didn't have to write the policy from scratch. And almost like those kind of strategies that people put in place instead of realizing. And I wonder about the leadership angle then, how leadership uses or applies systems to prevent the loss. Instead of finding some kind of synthesis between all of these things, we identify the loss and we try to use tech as an answer.
Look, I've always had this image of, call it the bottom part of the triangle, or what we would in our world would call the users. Okay. So the company would go and buy technology and give them access to this world. So they log in with their username and password. And those people need to then dance according to whatever's been dictated, designed into the back end of that system. In my mind, that becomes, those people and those systems become that fabric on the floor.
Okay, that the woman is pulling up.
Yes.
Okay.
That becomes the standard. I think Trish mentioned it about that, if you that's the definition of good.
Okay.
Now, the second level are then expected by the sociopaths to get as little of the people as they can to execute and keep this thing stable, this fabric stable, and to keep it making sense. And there's a hell of a lot of effort these people need to go into to actually get that right. And then the top people, they've got then obviously try and have the vision to foresee what needs to happen. They then pass it down to these middle people who sacrifice all their time and effort and identity. And I think that's important. I want to come back to that because the sociopaths recognize the middle people's identity based on their ability and how much effort they've gone into to try and live the standard. And that middle people, those are always the people that I worry about the most because they get stuck there. They came out of that bottom layer because the top people saw them as willing to offer up more of their time and energy to maintain or grow this bottom thing. And it seems to me like the loss of identity there is quite serious. So when you try and implement systems for these people to change, you're actually asking them to change a part of their identity. Which that's, you never hear change management people talk about that because that's really what's actually happening. Is you're asking this person, you've now for the last 10 years worked from 7 till 7, you don't never see your kids, whatever, to pull up the standard, and all of a sudden I'm going to give you something completely different to do that with. You don't know how to do it. And I think there's a lot of anxiety that comes with that. I think so. Does that answer question number 1?
Yeah, I think
you will have to remind me about question number 2.
Let me say this or ask you this. In your images, if you think about the Atlas image, do you think it's the top tier that's represented in the Atlas image or more of the middle tier?
No, I think it's the top tier people because there is it seems like they are willing to take up the weight
of this whole thing
as individuals.
Yes,
I think that's very important because normally when you meet those people, they are strong individuals. Now it could be, I don't know what label, but you do get, there's that book, what's it called book? The snakes
in suits.
Snakes in suits. For you to be able to perform in that area really well or that level, you're not the kindest, most vulnerable person. You're more of an individual and you're willing to carry this thing. Now, either the board is giving you this responsibility to carry. And if you go and look at their lives, I was lucky when I was very young. I mean, I was probably in my second year studying fine arts. I started buying and selling art to individuals. And I never knew this type of people, but I was lucky that these people buy art in their homes with a glass of red wine. So I had the opportunity to, evening after evening, sit in these people's houses in these big estates, those people who's got the money to buy art, and listen to them and understand them and try and observe them. And it seems to me like most of them are these individuals. And they are paid very well to carry this load.
Okay. So I think what stands out for me is if we try to find the synthesis between all of these tiers and these two contrasting images, I would say that this triangle, and I acknowledge we've had a lot of stereotypes just now, right? That is almost like a warning, saying to listeners or anyone interested to hear that, be careful of that, right? And in one of our episodes, we spoke about treating people as humans, right? And just acknowledging that. And that's almost a contrast to this going up in this hierarchy, is seeing people for who they are.
Yeah.
Where I think it links with identity is I think that's the synthesis, right? Is, are you going to create a company where this thing that we're producing and that we're all investing our time and mastery in becomes our only identity, because it's almost, our identity is almost settled in our skill set and in our achievement, okay? As opposed to being able to say, our identity is formed in what we can create together, It's not in that thing or this product or this revenue or whatever. It is in our ability to figure things out together and to use our individual skill sets well. And I think the only way to do that, to really create that kind of culture and identity, is if your top management, your Atlas guy, moves away from high control. Because I think you get that kind of triangle if you have a high control leader at the top that is trying to dictate everything that happens according to his or her picture of how this is going to unfold, and basically just outsourcing all of the work to the middle tier, right? And I think in one of our episodes, we actually discussed that. We discussed that if you want to grow past a certain point, if you want to move through the desert, I think was the analogy, you're going to have to let go of some of that ideologies and control, and really invest in the people, maybe in the tier below, in the middle tier, but also help them to see that their identity is not based in what they've already been able to do, you know, the things they've already mastered. But in saying, like, we're great as a team, we really work well together, we have synergy. This is a great opportunity to celebrate what we've done, which is what Lorinda said. We celebrate before we leave, right? And then say, but we're so good together, let's go, let's form something new in collaboration, so away from high control.
Yeah, so just to confirm for anybody, I'm not saying the pyramid is the right thing. That's kind of the satire. Like I said, it's the shadow.
It's the shadow side.
It's the shadow side of the organization, which it can become if you've got that.
Yes.
Which I unfortunately see a lot. I think a lot of people in these organizations who's got the ideal not to have that, but it's difficult to implement. So I did a talk at the Salesforce World Tour thing last week, Wednesday. And one of the notes, I took just stuff from the last few episodes, and one of the things that I picked up was that a system is a mirror of the people. So your system is really just as good or as chaotic or as clinical as the organization of the people, how they organize themselves around the products, the services, the processes. I'm wondering if we are in an organization, let's assume we are, because 9 out of them are in those situations where when you put in the system and it's chaotic, it doesn't really work. If it is true that it is a mirror of the sum of the individuals, how do we deal with that reality? Because in my mind, that's one of the most difficult things people don't want to admit, is that, shit, you know what, this thing is not working because we are not working. Yes. We are not aligned. We don't have, organizational structures or processes in place that really make stuff flow. Thus, the system is not flowing.
So it's funny to me because I think if I currently look at my own life and my own systems, it does reflect the absolute chaos I function in, right? So it's so true. But 2 things that stand out for me in that is, if I want to change that, I first have to acknowledge that what it reflects of me is actually somewhat problematic, you know? Parts of me are actually sometimes proud of my chaos.
Yes.
Because I don't mind functioning in it, right? And the second thing is, if you want to change that, you first have to face the shadow. So I think what is difficult for people, if their systems reflect where the company is at, is that people really struggle to stand eye to eye with their shadow or the shadow of the organization, because that means you have to accept that some things didn't work or that there has been failures. But the beauty of it is, if you can accept the shadow, saying it's not good or bad, it's just, I'm just observing, like you said in the beginning, I'm just seeing this. And then I almost use acceptance of the shadow. Now, hear me right. I don't mean acceptance here and saying it's okay.
Yeah.
Just acknowledging it is how it is. So if I look at my systems and I think they're quite chaotic at the moment, and it's not beneficial for me or anyone in the company or whatever, then I'm just acknowledging the shadow. I'm not saying it's good or bad. It's just there. And that's the starting point for change.
Well, that's assuming I can acknowledge it independently, that it's not my identity that I'm acknowledging.
Yes, true.
Because I think that's the problem.
Yes.
People look at it like, I don't want to admit or sit in this boardroom and say it's chaotic and it's a mirror of me, because it's...
Because you don't want it to reflect poorly on you. Yeah.
As an individual, because it's your
Which
identity.
then becomes the very block. Instead of just acknowledging something as it is, radically accepting it, because you can't change things before you accept it.
Yeah. Interesting.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Just want to jump in here, just simply because the image is still stuck with me. So if we're accepting that Atlas is the top tier, is the individual holding the weight and struggling under the burden of the responsibility, and your middle management is the woman trying to pull up the digital fabric and the standard of what is good, then what do we say is the lightning witch?
So there's another image that comes up. So lightning, depending on where you have it, normally can cause fire. And I've got a painting in our house that we bought a few years ago because it just reminded us of change, seasonal change. And it is that some plants can't grow or reproduce or flower without it burning. Proteas being famous for that. And you need the fire or this lightning strike to actually act as a catalyst for painful change. And for this one plant to reproduce, it needs fire, but there's obviously damage to other elements in that area. So I think that's one thing for me is...
That's beautiful though, because I think the lightning bolt for me is change.
And change is inevitable.
It is inevitable. It's like death and taxes.
It comes with the rain.
It comes, right? But we have to accept that in order for like what you're saying with the proteas, is in order for some things to live, we have to let go of other things. Something also has to die.
Yeah.
And isn't that what he was trying to depict with the lightning witch? Is that there's something striking that happens. It's for everybody.
Yeah.
And some things will die in the process, and other things will live because of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do see it as a catalyst, and it's never... Well, that type of catalyst never seems to come easily with a breeze. It needs to come
with force.
And the source of that intent or the source of that strike, in an organization can be from a build-out of tension, which it is
often.
Which the source of lightning is, and it's friction. But what is interesting about the image for me is that for lightning to happen, there needs to be a static energy on the ground and in the source. Because the lightning strike is really these two elements meeting each other. That's just interesting. I'm just thinking about it now. It's not really this one source like hitting down. You need both. So it feels like that, a lot of this conversation is around, there's this need for, there's this building, almost like a static energy building up in these organizations for a need for change, and it's driven by these people who's pulling, or whatever the case might be, and then you need that top level strike. And when they meet, you've got this energy that comes from it. Now we can talk about, what comes after that, but I think that's my thing about it.
I'm reminded of, I don't know, I can't remember the name of the movie, but there's a romantic comedy where they meet over the lightning that hits the sand, and then it makes some kind of like glass.
Sweet Home Alabama.
Look at you. So, and so it's almost like, depending on if the quality of the sand And the bottom force, if that culture is good, then the product of the collision is something really beautiful.
Yeah. And you can see it. You can see it between different organizations when they do that. I wanted to bring it specifically almost as a honor to him, to Painter.
Okay.
So just for context for the people who never had the privilege of getting to know him, Gerhard Painter passed away, unfortunately, 2 weeks ago from brain cancer. Very good friend of ours, mutual friend, and but he was an artist. He was also a businessman. He had quite a large company, probably one of the biggest animation companies in South Africa. And we were talking about it last weekend about what he represented. And in my mind, he represented what I wrote here as a vulnerability enabler. And I wonder if this lightning strike is not, it happens unplanned. You can't foresee it. And it only really happens when you've got this top energy willing to, this is not working. There's a release of this tension. There's somebody sitting there thinking, this is not working. This needs to be better. Let's talk about this.
Yes.
Just open up this conversation. And when you open up that conversation, you've got this.
So when you own the vulnerability.
Yeah. Because he specifically, my memory of him was his willingness to listen, not to judge, and listen to anyone, and then just say, okay, well, great, let's move this conversation forward. And he was and it seems like that not the geest, the spirit of it, that spirit that he had in him comes and goes in organizations at interesting times, and you can't foresee it, you can't plan for it. And I think that's a big thing for system implementations or change in business, is you can't really plan for it. It happens when an individual has gone through enough frustration or enough tension, and he just says it, and he asks a question, and that.
When I think of him, I'm so aware of how he always arrived in his like raw, real, authentic self. And that's part of being vulnerable enough so if we put it into this systems talk, what you're saying is somebody needs to be vulnerable enough to face their shadow. Somebody that's actually in that high tier needs to be vulnerable enough to face their shadow, which means you're letting go of the shield of perfectionism, right? And so you're just like vulnerable and owning it and authentically arriving, and that becomes the catalyst.
Yeah.
And you know what's the most beautiful thing of that? That authenticity takes away anxiety.
Yeah.
So if everybody is anxious about the change, just being authentic and vulnerable puts everyone at ease, saying, oh, this is not that dangerous. It's safe here. We can do the change.
He was an animator, but he was also a vulnerable,
like a pioneer.
Like a pioneer, absolutely. Even that last movie he made, I think it was Headspace. Even if you look at the story behind it, is these aliens coming into my head, and how do we fight them? So that's the background on Painter, and he's got there's a truth in his life that I want to bring into this conversation to honor him for that, is his willingness to listen, and to, when he heard something that normally people wouldn't want to act on, because it forces then a vulnerable conversation. Regardless of the circumstances, regardless of where we were, he would allow that thing to continue. He would catalyze that conversation, say, let's go deeper into that.
And he would do it with so much ease. It was a natural gift he had.
Absolutely. All right, so I think that's where I want to try and go with this, Carien, is identity.
Okay.
Is all of these people we chatted to, and the people we'll continue to chat with, came in a capacity as a representative of something. They represent some function in an organization or a position in an organization, how do we help, and what can we do in our next conversations to help them split even more from that role or that function, so we can really get into the meat of these people and how they actually either dealt with failures, and or B, how did they get stuff right? How did they actually implement change, be it systems or people in organizations?
Look, I think what we need to honor them for, similar to Gerhard, is the willingness to be vulnerable, right? And you know me, I have a celebrity crush on Brené Brown, right? and her work. And a big part of her work is around that, about how to be vulnerable, how to have an identity that doesn't have to uplive to a certain image. Like you don't have to have this perfect, flawless, I have it all together attitude. And you can just be vulnerable. Now, I think part of it, and maybe something to consider for the future as well, is we always think of vulnerability, as we said just now, about like of something that you do to face your shadow. But I think another thing about vulnerability is also just celebrating small successes, you know, like those little victories, things that you're really proud of, you know. Sometimes I think some nights I'm like, oh, I did it all today. I got to the school run. I finished this important deadline or whatever it is, you know. And
Good
you could
excuse
just
to enjoy that glass of wine.
Yeah, you're just like celebrating small victories. And I think part of owning that we don't have to have big victories as part of our identity. We can be proud of the little things we achieve, of the moments that we were able to just connect with nature or play with our children, and it was just beautiful, you know, to really celebrate the beauties of what happens in companies as well.
Yeah.
I was reminded now of one of our guests just speaking about like honoring that somebody had to travel really far that day, or that somebody might not have access to food or a meal that day. You know, those small things, seeing that, owning that, celebrating that also makes us vulnerable.
Yeah.
It moves the narrative away from our identity having to be some kind of achievement.
Yeah.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think maybe, listen, we don't, like we said in the beginning, we don't have to have a specific deliverable for this conversation, but I think a deliverable could be, if it has to be, is just to remind people to do that. You know, wherever they find themselves, in a meeting or in a online call or whatever, wherever they find themselves, to remind themselves to do that, to celebrate those little moments, because it does open up the opportunity for vulnerability, which then leads to more and more and more, which can lead to that catalyst moment that changes the course of a business. I told it to you earlier, or I said it to you earlier, C.S. Lewis, who we both like, that quote of his, he says, virtue, even an attempt at virtue, brings light. Indulgence always brings fog. And I'm wondering in the organization how that manifests, because it does, you know, because difficult to foresee potential for change, you know, how to lift a stand if it's foggy.
So let's look at the word indulgence.
Yeah.
I think we hear it, and I don't know about you, but my first thought is like food, you know, okay, it almost is, it comes with this idea that you cannot resist the urge to do something, right? But for me, indulgence is even broader. And in a company, I think indulgence is giving in to our shields. So the things we use to protect ourselves, whether that is something like alcohol or food, or if it is working too hard or putting our identity in something, like whatever it is that we use to keep ourselves safe, even if we know it comes with a cost, you know? Giving into that is indulgence.
Yeah.
And I like what C.S. Lewis says, it brings fog. So what is fog? It takes away the clarity. You can't see where you're going.
Yes. And funny enough how that tension remains where people know that because they've seen the fog before from falling back into those indulgences. Yet we keep on doing it.
Yes, and the question would be
why do people do that? Why do we keep on doing it?
Because you feel it gives you a sense of safety. So let's use food, right? Let's say you know you shouldn't eat bread. Okay, you don't feel great if you eat bread.
Yeah.
But now you're like there, and somebody made one of those really nice soetbrode with a nice cream and sugar in the bottom, and it's fresh and it smells nice, and you're aware that it's not going to be great for you. Okay. Why? I think what would make the difference between whether you say no to that moment or if you take that is going to be the state you're in, right? So if you were having a crappy day, you were just fighting with your kids or your partner, and you're just like, oh, this is really going to comfort me, then you most probably are going to take it, right? But if you're not in a vulnerable space, it's easier to resist it. And to resist the urges that we give into. And so to quantify that to a bigger place is, I think, when people feel a need to protect themselves for whatever reason, the anxiety of the change or the demands of holding it all together, or to protect yourself from the criticism you're going to get because of the sacrifices you made, all of those things become so overwhelming that the immediate relief of the indulging act is highly reinforced.
Yeah.
So you keep on doing it.
And what would you say is, because I think therein lies a lie, that the opposite of that is to be virtuous, to do everything right. But what he's saying is, even an attempt at it brings light. So what I'm hearing is, if I choose not to indulge in whatever helps with my anxiety in this workplace or in this place of change, I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to do it perfectly to avoid the fog. Even an attempt at it brings light.
And light always moves away darkness.
Yeah.
Even if it's a little bit of light. And I think that's the super encouraging thing. It's like, I think somehow we got this idea that being vulnerable or authentic is going to be dangerous to us, or that people will see our dark sides, when the truth is actually that is enough light. Just being there, vulnerably authentic, is so truthful that is enough light to move away a lot of the darkness.
Yeah.
And what's nice about that, sorry, I'm jumping in again. It just brings me back to all the images that you mentioned at the beginning. If you in that state of vulnerability, authenticity, what it actually elicits is empathy. So then for the first time, the images connect. It's not just me, myself, and I trying to pull this thing up. I also, for the first time, see, well, Atlas above me is struggling just as hard. The position is just different. I might be pulling, he's holding, or she's holding. And if there's empathy, there's also proximity, there's a closeness, and then we're in it together. We're not siloed and alone. And I think that is also a very good antidote for indulgence.
Yeah.
Yes.
Constantly being in my own little passion drive, I'm struggling. We all actually are struggling together. And I think that brings about synthesis that you mentioned in the beginning.
100%. And to steal from my role model again, I think Brené says that essentially empathy is the antidote to shame. And shame is the darkness. Shame is the thing that drives us to indulgence. Shame is the thing that isolates us, that makes us fall into that dark triangle.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And the antidote is empathy. That is the synthesis.
Yes, and actually, if we're there in shame, we fear the lightning witch, when in fact it is the catalyst for growth.
Yeah.
It is the thing that burns to chaff that mustn't be there and brings forth the prettier, the light, the new.
Yeah. And it feels like that's what's needed.
Yeah.
In organizations, especially at this time, like what's her name? Sonia said, this liminal space where there's a lot of uncertainty. And I hope that from this conversation we'll spark some more conversations and go even deeper, because, again, it's a systems business and systems and change podcast, but we need to maintain that discipline to go to the first principles, and if it means we need to go to this level to do that. Do you think there's anything beyond this that we should have looked at from those conversations that you maybe came up with you?
I think the only thing that I mentioned earlier, and maybe we can just dig into a little bit more, is what is the role of the leader in this? Like, how does a leader cultivate a culture of authenticity and vulnerability and empathy? You've had many experiences leading companies. What did you find as things that kind of create that culture or that destroys that culture?
Look, I think in my experience, it starts with somebody being willing to chat to another individual, just sitting down and asking them how they're doing, and building a trust relationship from there, which the trust then creates an opportunity for the leader to say, listen, I also struggle, or I also struggle in my family or financially, or whatever the case might be. That then opens the opportunity for the person they're doing this one-on-one with. Now, if you imagine Atlas at the top, just for a moment, putting down his burden and being willing to just sit with that female figure, just say, stop for a moment. Let's just talk about what you're doing, why you're doing this. Does it still make sense? Because the moment you're willing to ask a question or bring in a topic that might undermine your own little story that you're fabricating around this business, that in my mind says to this person, I'm willing to let go of this, not a lie, but a story. Because each organization is in reality a story, right? It's a story being told by these people at the top, and it's enforced by the people in the middle. And if I'm willing to say, listen, this story doesn't always make sense, but we can talk about this as individuals, but when we walk out of here, we try and maintain the story. I think having this willingness to do that, in my mind, creates that vulnerability. And then when that person is willing to do the same with other people in the organization, that kind of over time creates this, okay, cool, listen, now we can see the truth. The truth is we've got this story that we need to act out, this product, this service, whatever the case might be, but it's not us. That is not me. Me is the conversation I have with you in a one-on-one.
And the story is not an absolute, you know, so I don't come in as a leader with this vision that's an absolute. No one can change it because that is my picture. So a willingness to almost design and craft something together, which is different. We're not saying, I think I'm hearing you say, let's say that, that it's not about the leader checking in personally with every single person in the company and walking with them and almost babying them. It's more about checking in to co-fabricate, to collaborate on something instead of forcing down the high control leader's picture of where we're going.
Yes, yeah. Because a lot of these systems are either a manifestation of this leader's will, his will and how the processes need to run or whatever the case might be, or where I've seen it work really well, where it's a result of a combination of a lot of people's understanding of how things could be and their best attempt to enact that for now.
Yes.
And it's not forever. It's for now. It's like I said it in the talk the other day. My mind, building systems are like sandcastles on a beach. You know, this thing that we building this thing forever and it's written in stone, that's a lie. It's something that you build You get all the hands to help you, and then the wave comes, and the wave is the market, right, or the tide, and it washes this castle away. It's still there, but it's kind of irrelevant. It doesn't work the same as it used to. And this ability to quickly
build it up again, try something.
And that organizations who seem to be willing to approach it that way seem to be the people who's willing to accept that that is the truth. Which is funny enough not happening in conversations. They're selling the lie that, this is the instruction we got, this is how we're going to do it, and you run with that. Otherwise, you get a final written warning or a performance counseling session in your
which gives me anxiety just listening to you.
And then you fall back on that, and then those people seem to fall back on those indulgences, which then just leads to fog, which leads to blah, 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 blah.
100%.
Yeah. Listen, anything else? Did you have anything else to add?
No, I think that was great. It's so nice to just unpack it at a slower pace and just muse a little bit. I don't think we muse enough about things.
Yeah. And please, for the people who's listening or watching, please excuse the dramatic imagery, but it's our way of processing.
I think it's good.
And I'm looking forward to future conversations to expand on this even more. Thank you, Carien.
And if anyone can find the statue, Lochner really wants it.
Yes, please. I don't have the money for it, but maybe somebody will give it to us.
Yes, it can be our new, instead of the plant, we could have the lightning.
Yes, imagine.
Thank you.